Hello. I want to do a book review of another Don Lancaster book. This one's called The Micro Cookbook, Volume 1. And the subtitle underneath says The How-To Book, Everything You Need to Know to Start Using and Profiting from Microcomputers and Microprocessors. So this book came out in 1982, and I like it a lot. I've been working with microprocessors and microcontrollers for since college, since the mid 80s. And my senior project in college was actually a programmable drum machine that was based on a Z80 microprocessor. And I'll probably do a video about that project. I still have the board for it. I made it with wire wrapping, and I got it to work, and with a lot of fun. It was a fun project. So and I really got into microprocessors. I just thought once I started, understanding what you could do with them, they're pretty amazing. I look at them as like a blank canvas, like for like an artist. A canvas is what you start with. You can kind of do anything with it. Same thing with like a microcontroller or microprocessor. It's really kind of like a blank canvas, and you can, depending on how you write the software for it or the firmware, you can really make them do a whole lot of different stuff, all kinds of really cool applications. And I've worked at a number of companies that where I did development of products using microcontrollers, microprocessors. I have a video on my channel that's a talk I did at my high school that kind of does a review of my engineering career. So if you watch that or kind of fast forward through it, it has a lot of slides in there. I did some PowerPoint slides. I have a lot of photos of projects that I've worked on that all involve a microcontroller. So one, I want to mention a couple of things about this book that I thought were really useful. One thing in the back that's kind of cool is a section that he calls for essential skills, and I thought this was really interesting, and these things really make a lot of sense for engineers if you're into product development or you work with electronics. So he said, and this is Don Lancaster speaking, but he was talking to the head honcho of a leading micro outfit, and this leader was saying how it was hard to get good help and good technical and programming help. And he said the problem wasn't someone with work experience or their educational background. It was more fundamental things, and it was four things that he wanted to emphasize. So the first thing was he wants. I highlighted them here. I'm going to just kind of touch on the most important points. But the first one was he wanted to find people that write things down. When you're working on any kind of project, doing any kind of development with with electronics or programming, it's critical to really document everything you do, especially what doesn't work and what does work. And he basically said, it's critical as you're working on a project to document everything you do and how you got to where you are in any project, whether it's working or not. And it's helpful to yourself as well as other people. One thing that's kind of hard to, I found this interesting, but you can write firmware or develop something and years later look at it and wonder what your thought process was or how you developed it. And one thing that I try to do is put a lot of comments in any kind of code I write, and excuse me, and just really kind of explain where like the circuit came from or a algorithm in a software. So it's important to write stuff down. I think I still have a lot of notebooks from pretty much every place I've worked at that for a lot of projects I have. Some things are better documented than others, but as I work on stuff today, I try to really fully document everything I do. Number two was he wanted someone who blames himself first or herself. Usually when you put something together and you're working on something, if it works the first time, you're really lucky. A lot of times when I build something, it doesn't work the first time, and it's easy to think, a part is faulty or something unrelated to anything that you did. But he said, often if you blame yourself first, that's usually the best approach. You have to, if something's not working, you got to reassess. Okay, did I put it together correctly? Was it properly designed? Am I following all the guidelines of the data sheet? of a certain part. So it's rare when a part is actually defective. It can happen, but typically if something doesn't work or some software doesn't work, it's usually your own fault. You overlook something. There's some detail or aspect that you have to figure out to get it working. Number 3 was he's looking for someone who is persistent, and this I find makes up sometimes for not having as much information or knowledge or natural ability as maybe someone else. If you have someone that is really persistent, that can overcome a lot. And a lot of times getting something accomplished or getting something done is just a matter of putting in the effort and being persistent. And he says, you will almost always grossly underestimate how much time or work is involved in anything new. And you have to allow for this. And I find this to be really true if I'm working with a new part or new software or any kind of new technology. It's sometimes easy for me to think, okay, I'll figure this out. It'll take me X number of hours, and it's usually twice or 3 or 4 times that, or even more. So, but being persistent goes a long way. So, then the last one was someone who is results oriented. So, this is something that, if you think about it, that's really all that matters, is getting a certain result and getting something working, whether it's maybe ugly or not. If it's functional, if it does what you're trying to accomplish, you can always refine it and make it better, which is what he mentions here. He says something sloppily done that works is far better than something that does not. Things are easily improved once they actually exist. So that's an important thing that I thought was really useful. So those 4 things again is, someone who writes things down, someone who blames himself or herself first if something isn't working, someone who is persistent, and someone who is results oriented. So, and then one thing that I want to talk about that I thought was kind of a neat analogy is very early in the book, he kind of gives like a hypothetical story where this box shows up at your house, and it's just a box with an opening on it, and the box is called, they're working on a new car. It's a secret box. The car is called Conveyance. So basically, there's a car in this box. It can become any kind of car you want. You just got to write down a description on a piece of paper and put it in the slot, and it'll turn into whatever you want. So he talks about how, hopefully this turns up on the video, how he initially writes down like a sports car, for example, and all of a sudden magically a sports car appears. Then he says he tries this other approach. He sees an ad in the paper where they're looking for people with cement trucks. So he says, okay, we're going to write down that this vehicle is going to become a cement truck. So he writes it on a piece of paper, puts it in the box, and it becomes a cement truck. So then he says another example where he meant to write fire truck and he spells it wrong and ends up getting this really wacky vehicle that looks like a motorcycle with tractor wheels or whatever. So the point of this whole story, and then he finally writes down it's a fire truck and he gets a fire truck out of it. The point of the story is that the microcontroller is the analogy here is that the box is like a microcontroller. You can make it to be whatever you want, but you have to clearly define it, as in the case of the sports car and the cement truck and eventually the fire truck. A clear definition written down and put in the box makes it into that kind of vehicle. If you make a mistake or you're not clear, you end up getting something really bizarre or something not functional. So microcontrollers are a lot like that. If you write the software well, you can make it do exactly what you want. If you're not clear in your thought process or how you translate it into code, usually something doesn't work. So and lastly, I wanted to talk about actually some tangible examples of some points in that book. What I have here are 3 surplus circuit boards I got over the years. I'll talk about each one, but I'll show them all here. Each one of these has a microcontroller in them that I've worked with before, and I got all these really inexpensively, like a fraction of the parts cost. like for example, this board is a really simple. There's a microchip pick under the LCD in here, and I just added up what the parts would cost to make this board, probably between 10 and 20 bucks. I got this for under $1, and I bought a bunch of these. It was a surplus place, and I bought a couple just to see what was on it. And when I took off the display, what was under it was a microchip 16F872. It's a flash chip, so you can reprogram it. And I haven't done a schematic yet for it, but I believe the programming header is this thing right here. And what's really cool is I looked up the part. It's got a lot of really nice features. Has a lot of I/O. Has 10-bit A to D converters. Just a lot of cool stuff. Timer counters. It's like a mid-range microchip pick. And I've done a lot of work with microchip picks in the past. And so I have a lot of code that I've written, and I can take little working chunks and algorithms. And I'm gonna probably make this into some kind of either a MIDI controller, because I'm really into MIDI, or something related to music or audio. So this is one example of something where it's kind of like the box in that book I was talking about that he calls Conveyance. This is kind of like the blank slate, and depending on what kind of product you want to develop, you can basically program this to do anything. So that's like example number one. So this has a microchip pick in it. This thing right here is kind of cool. I'll do a little plug for where I got this from. There's a company in Euclid, Ohio called HGR, and really great place. I buy a lot of stuff there. They sell surplus electronics, but a lot of machinery mostly. And I bought a ton of stuff there. I'll do some videos about them. But anyways, I was there one day, and they had this box of about 20 of these. They were like data terminals, and there's a keypad here, and they had a sheet that went inside here that defined what all the button presses are. But basically, I think this was like $5 or something. It was pretty cheap, and I bought a couple of them, and I took them home, and found out that there's a nice matrix keypad, big LCD display. I think 20 by 2 characters, and then inside, I pulled the chip out, but it's like an 8051 flash chip, so obviously you can pull it out and you can reprogram it, and it's just got some really basic stuff on it. I drew a schematic of it, and this thing's going to definitely become like a MIDI controller, and or some MIDI bass pedals, and it has a regulator, some basic I/O. I think there's a EEPROM on here as well. So this thing's going to become a device probably in like another video. Has a little piezo beeper. Last example is this thing that I bought at another company I really like a lot called American Science and Surplus, and they had this thing. It was a kind of like a data log in log out terminal for a company. There's text on here saying lunch break, clock in, clock out. So I think these were really inexpensive too, like a fraction of the parts cost. This thing has a Motorola 6803, so it's kind of a much older microcontroller. But when I was in college, first micro class I took involved the Motorola 6800. So the 6803 is like an upgrade from that. It's got some really cool features on it. It has some I/O and everything. This has an EEPROM, and I already took one of these. I did a video, and there's another video on my channel where I made this into just a really simple serial terminal. You can reprogram the EEPROM. So this is going to become another project. Again, it's got an LCD keypad, micro, not a whole lot of circuitry on it, and so I'll do some more videos on that. But I want to talk about these because these are kind of examples of what was covered in that book about how a microcontroller is kind of like a magic box almost. It's a box. You can define any kind of feature, any kind of function, and if you follow through the thought process, and structure the software, correctly, and you write it well, you can kind of make, any kind of product become a pretty cool device. So all these were originally some other, had some other function, and I'm going to reprogram them for things that I would like to make. So thanks for watching. I hope you find this useful. Bye.